Hey folks, welcome back to Software Testing Hacks. In previous video, we learned about black box testing. In this video, let's talk about white box testing. Basically, you might be knowing in types of testing, there are three different types of testing. One is black box testing, white box testing, and gray box testing. In this video, let's talk about white box testing. Before we begin, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. White box testing tests internal coding and infrastructure of software and the focus on checking of predefined inputs against expected and desired outputs. So here in black box testing, we tested the without having the internal coding knowledge, we tested the application, right? But in case of white box testing, it is opposite. Here, we will test the internal coding and the infrastructure, internally how it works. The total internal behavior of the code will be tested as part of white box testing. It is based on inner workings of an application and revolves around internal structure testing. In this type of testing, programming skills are required to design test cases. Basically, we check the inner working. For example, if there is a application, okay, whenever you enter a valid username and password, what should happen? You should be able to log in, right? But in case if you're not able to log in, which means that you have entered a wrong email address and password, then what should happen, right? So that all these things will be handled through the coding. Okay, whatever we see on the UI is just the UI designing. Okay, what are the elements that are present on the application? We can see that, but the logic, whatever behavior will be done, happens, that will be through the code only, right? So that coding part will be tested here. So for this, programming skills are required. The primary goal of white box testing is to focus on the flow of inputs and outputs through the software and strengthening the security of the software. Okay. So the primary goal of the white box testing is to focus on the inputs. What input I'm giving as a user, I can give any input, but the code should be in a position to handle the logic properly. If I've entered the wrong email address and password, then I should be able to log in or not. No, right? Since it is wrong, it should avoid me. It should, throw me an error saying that you cannot log in because you have entered invalid or wrong combination of username and password. So that capacity must be there to the code. So that is how we can check the security of the application software. White box testing, which is also known as glass box testing, okay, structural testing, clear box testing, open box testing, transparent box testing. Okay, so these are the other names. If anyone asks you with a different words like this, then you must be aware that so these are the terminologies or terms that is used for white box testing. Okay, so basically developers do white box testing. This developer will test every line of code of the program. Okay, here the developer will go through each line of the code and then see how the logic has been written. Okay, the white box testing contains various tests which are as follows, which is like path testing, loop testing, condition testing, testing based on memory perspective. So what happens is since it is a code based testing, first we have to check whether the path for the instance like whatever I gave an example of the login. Okay, there are two paths. Okay, as an user I can enter a valid email and password combination. Also as a user I can enter even an invalid email address and password combination also. So it should have the capacity to choose whichever is the correct one. If I have entered valid credentials, then the next step, I mean, it should allow me to perform whatever the next step is. But if I've entered wrong or invalid combination, then it should throw me an error. So that is where the path testing comes into picture. How the path is working, with the positive, with the negative. How the path is working. If there are any internal or if there are any different condition, in such condition, how the path is going. Is it going in the right direction or not? Will be tested as part of this path testing. Loop testing. So, for example, there is a for loop. Okay, if there is a for loop, how the for loop is working? So, at what condition it is entering into the loop, and at what condition, okay, it comes out of the loop. Okay, all this can be tested. All this can be just in a high level through the code we can verify. So that is where the loop testing comes into picture. And condition testing, there could be certain conditions like if else. So there could be some different conditional statements also. So that also will be considered while testing this white box testing. Testing based on memory perspective. Sometimes what happens, there is a chance of declaring a variable again and again, right? So rather than that, we can make it as a global variable. So basically, this will help in the from the memory perspective, it will help basically for the reusability as well, right? So here, as part of the memory perspective testing, we can test that whether it is reusable code can be is present or not, or else how variables are declared. All this can be considered while for testing this memory based perspective testing for white box testing. Okay, so there are four different types of testings that we can perform: path testing, loop testing, condition testing, and testing based on the memory perspective. On a high level, in path testing, whether all the different path it is able to navigate or not, whether it is able to satisfy different conditions or not, can be tested as part of the path testing. In loop testing, loops such as for loops will be tested. In condition testing, where the condition based on if condition or any nested conditions will be there. So all that condition, how it is performing, can be tested as part of the condition testing. And in case of testing based on memory perspective, so here how the variables are being declared, whether the code is reusable or not. All this can be verified as part of the final last test. Okay, let's move ahead. So then reasons for performing white box testing. Why do we want to test this? Okay. It identifies internal security holes. Okay. If there is anything which is, from code perspective, if anything which is, exposing our details to the other users, or there are chances of the, other person can hack, right? So how can we avoid it? How we can, certain things we can handle through code, right? So those things can be identified. Any loopholes or any security holes, if there is anything present, we can identify it early before even the UI is ready. We can test it from the logic perspective, right? Check the way of input inside the code. Okay, to check the way of input, what input and what output. Basically, here also we concentrate on what input we are giving and what output we are getting. Check the functionality of conditional loops. Okay, it checks the functionality of that. And then to test function, object, and statement at an individual level. Okay, so we can differently, basically what we can say is, if you know unit testing, where the particular unit will be tested, right? So so that is how we can also check whether the code is able to satisfy all if you are writing a specific code, there will be certain conditions, there are certain rules that you need to follow as part of the particular programming language, whether that is being satisfied or not. All that can be verified. So that is the reason we have to perform white box testing. Let's talk about some of the advantages of black box testing. Sorry, it is white box testing. White box testing. optimizes code so hidden errors can be identified. Okay. With the help of it, we can identify if there is any error in the early stage as well as if there are any hidden error that can be identified through the white box testing. Test cases of white box testing can be easily automated. Basically, the unit test cases will be automated. Okay. This testing is more thorough than other testing approach as it covers all code paths. Okay, we know that it covers like path testing and then loop testing, condition testing. So different types of testing it covers. So basically, it is more thorough. It can be started in SDLC phase even without GUI, graphical user interface. Basically, without even the UI is ready, we can test the code or logic part. Okay. So basically, this is all about white box testing. In black box testing, we learned about certain techniques as well, which is more important for us. Black box testing is very much important as a software testers because the concentration would be on different techniques because that techniques will be used to write even the test cases as well. Okay, so that is how we will improve our thinking skills, right? So that is why black box testing is very much important from that perspective. And white box testing, it is better to have a good, clear picture of what is white box testing and what are the different types of testing that are present in the white box testing and how do we perform it. Okay, so hopefully in this video you learned about white box testing clearly. If you have liked this video, please do like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.